What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is part of a series where I focus on a specific director and then rank that director's work from worst to best. Done such directors in the past such as Lars von Trier, Spike Lee, Spike Jonze, Wes Anderson, and many more directors. You guys can check out all those directors in my director playlist down below. But guys, you clicked on this video so you know this time around I focus on Sam Raimi's films and ranking them from worst to best. Now do keep in mind, if you're new to the channel, this will not include any short films, music videos, video games, TV shows, none of that. Just specifically speaking, feature-length films. And as of the filming of this video, which is September of 2023, Sam Raimi has done 15 films. So I'll be ranking them from 15 being his worst to 1 being his best. And of course, my humble opinion. And of course, I'll be looking forward to seeing your guys' ranking of his work down below. But guys, enough exposition. Let's get started. So kicking things off, the bottom of the barrel, we have number 15, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So this was actually the movie that really got the ball rolling in terms of me saying, hey, I want to, try to watch all of Sam Raimi's movies. But I gotta say, this movie was just not good. Honestly, a lot of Sam Raimi's touch marks and trademarks, if you will, as a director just can't really be seen in this movie. This feels like a corporate product. It's soulless, it's very dull. It's very rushed, but at the same time, very dull. It's a slog. It feels overlong. It's got such a laughably bad ending. I did not like this movie in the slightest. And yeah, that is why it's my number 15. Next up, my number 14, we have For Love of the Game. This is a movie that on paper should be right up my alley. It's directed by Sam Raimi. It has Kevin Costner in the lead role, and it's about baseball. What could go wrong? Well, the problem is the movie is mostly focused on a romance that I really did not care about in the slightest. When the movie focuses on baseball, yeah, it has interest for sure, but the problem is it's well over 2 hours long, and again, most of that focus is given to the romance, which I just did not like. And if you have a movie that's heavily focused on a romance that you just aren't really invested in, it's going to feel longer than it is, and that was the case with this movie. It's not terrible by any means, it's just very lifeless and a slog to get through, and yeah, that's why For Love of the Game, it's my number 14. Next up, my number 13, we have Oz, the Great and Powerful. So this has some of Sam Raimi's, trademarks, his style, like the cam work and everything that I do appreciate. I do like the makeup for this movie, and I think that the cast is definitely game for sure. Even though I wasn't a big fan of Mila Kunis's performance, and that whole villain just wasn't really something that I found to be interesting. The pacing and the tone are also kind of off at times, which definitely halted a lot of this. So overall, I felt disappointed, but there are some things that I do appreciate, and I definitely did like it better than the other two movies I mentioned. Not good, but by no means terrible. Just something I'm not the biggest fan of, unfortunately. But still, it is my number 13. Next up, my number 12, we have Drag Me to Hell. So this is a zany horror movie, and I do like horror films, and I can appreciate zany horror films in particular, but this one just really, I wasn't able to get on its wavelength, unfortunately. Maybe I'll revisit it down the line, but as it stands, I just was watching and I was like, whatever. I mean, it's fine in terms of the acting. Some of the horror works, I suppose, but a lot of it just really isn't that scary and not effective at building tension. But even the comedy just doesn't always land. Most of the time, actually, it just doesn't land for me personally. But I can see why it has a cult following. I can see why people would enjoy it. Just for me, I liked it better than Oz, the Great and Powerful, but still not something that I wholly am able to embrace. And yeah, that's why it's my number 12. Next up, my number 11, we have Crime Wave. So this was, I believe, Sam Raimi's first movie, and it's kind of funny because watching it, I was like, this feels kind of like the Coen Brothers meets the Three Stooges. And ironically enough, it is, if I'm not mistaken, written by the Coen Brothers. You see, Sam Raimi and the Coen Brothers apparently were really close. I think they still are. But it makes sense because there's a movie that Sam Raimi would do later on after Crime Wave that is even more similar to another Coen Brothers movie. I'll get into that in a little bit, obviously. But it's just very interesting to see the writing of the Coen Brothers with the style of Sam Raimi. And that's why Crime Wave, it is by no means a good movie. I actually felt mixed about it, but it did have some elements that I did quite appreciate. I did enjoy some of the humor, some of the slapstick humor did work. The performances, in particular, the villain who's very much so over the top and is always laughing. I enjoyed that. But just some elements of the story didn't fully work, and some of the pacing is kind of off. But overall, I felt mixed about this. I would definitely give it like a light recommendation because I do think that it is kind of wild, and you can watch this and say, "Hey, okay, I see where Sam Raimi was coming from as a director. Like, okay, this is like an early trademark that he would you know, get better and better with over time." But yeah, I would say watch Crime Wave, and yeah, that's why it's my number 11. And next up, my number 10, we have Spider-Man 3. So this is a movie that is quite ambitious, and I do admire that for sure. And there are some pretty interesting elements. I like the score quite a bit. Danny Elfman's score is really, really good. Tobey Maguire is clearly trying to give it his all. But the problem is there's just too many villains. It's overstuffed to the gills. It's got a romance that feels very melodramatic to the point of where I wasn't a big fan of it. But it does have some other elements that I did like. I did find it to be interesting with how Spider-Man was delving with certain elements, like how he was trying to balance these elements even more so than the second one. Like at first everything's fine, and then you start to see the ripples of the seams start to show, and it's like, okay, this is interesting to see how he's going to be dealing with all this. But again, with the length of it and the melodramatic elements, there's just a lot of things that hold this movie back, such as those elements. But on top of that, the ending, whilst I get what they were going for, it wasn't something I was fully able to say, yeah, I liked that ending. It was something I was kind of like, about. But overall, it's a mess of a movie, but I do admire it quite a bit. And yeah, that's why it's my number 10. Next up, at number 9, we have The Quick and the Dead. This is Sam Raimi tackling the Western genre with a killer cast. I mean, you have Sharon Stone, Gene Hackman. It's a great cast. And I do like his style in a Western. I think it's something that is investing, but I just wasn't really that invested in the story itself. The filmmaking is there for sure, but the actual story, the execution of the plotting just wasn't something that really gelled and worked with me. But I thought it was okay. I can see why some people might love it. If I'm not mistaken, it does have a cult following. But for me, I just think it's okay. But still, it is my number 9. Next up, my number 8, we have Spider-Man. So this is the one that started this trilogy to begin with. Sam Raimi's trilogy, I should say. And Spider-Man I like to an extent. I don't love it. I don't think it's great. I don't even think it's good. I think it's a mixed bag, but there are elements to it that do make it to where I can say, hey, I enjoyed the movie. I do think that William Dafoe is really good. I mean, it's William Dafoe, so that makes sense. I do like the acting quite a bit. I do think that some elements work, but there are some elements in terms of some of the visual effects that haven't aged well, and I also do think that the costume of the Green Goblin is something that I've never really been the biggest fan of, at least from a teenager onwards, but watching it now especially, it just doesn't really work. And that's something that's a shame because, again, you have William Dafoe who's doing such a great job as Green Goblin, but as it stands, not a terrible movie. Again, I feel mixed to okay about it, but yeah, I liked it enough to where it's able to be higher than Spider-Man 3 and The Quick and the Dead. So that's something. But yeah, Spider-Man is my number 8. Next up, we're getting into the nitty gritty. My number 7 is The Evil Dead. So I always get this mixed up if it's The Evil Dead or Crime Wave. That was Sam Raimi's first film. But either way, whatever the case may be, Sam Raimi's The Evil Dead is a great example of low budget filmmaking and how you can have filmmakers that are very passionate and create something that is so fresh, so invigorating, and that is definitely the case with The Evil Dead. Watching it, you can definitely tell that these filmmakers were passionate. They definitely had a lot of care put into everything, and it's just, you can't help but really fall for that aspect of this film. I mean, for crying out loud, Sam Raimi's cinematography is something that's really good. I mean, he created that iconic shot now, the Evil Dead shot is what it's called, where it's like, the camera's like going around like wildly. It's like a point of view shot. I mean, that's in this, and that's what started it. I respect The Evil Dead. I do. I don't love it, but I do respect it, and I do think it's a solid film, and yeah, that's why it's my number 7. Next up, my number 6 is The Gift. No, not Joel Edgerton's The Gift. This is The Gift, 2000, directed by Sam Raimi. Cate Blanchett does a great job. I liked the acting overall, and I do think the Southern Gothic mystery of this film is intriguing. It does lead a lot of allure. I like the atmosphere of this film. I really do. I like the performances. Every single performance, except Keanu Reeves' performance, is a bit iffy. But besides that, the only other issue I have is that there's a character that does something towards the end and then explains it, like over explains, and I wasn't a big fan of that. But overall, I liked this film. It surprised me. I went into it with low expectations, and I came out of it just said, you know what, this was actually rock solid. Like I liked it, and I would definitely recommend The Gift. Watch it. That's why it's my number 6. And now we get to the top 5, guys. So my number 5, we have Dark Man. This stars Liam Neeson, Frances McDormand, and this has been on my radar for quite some time. And it was actually the last film that I had to watch of Sam Raimi's before I was able to say, yeah, I've seen all of his films. And Darkman, I went into it with relatively low expectations, but I found myself thoroughly enjoying this film. I think the pacing is really good. Sam Raimi's directing style is top notch, and it works perfectly with the material. I liked Liam Neeson's performance. I loved the makeup. The makeup is outstanding, but this is just overall a really interesting film that is a superhero film nonetheless, that really gets you on board with this character's journey. And it's only 90 minutes, like without the credits, so it flies by. It's very well paced. If you've been sleeping on Darkman, I would highly recommend you check this out because it surprised me, and I don't think people talk about it enough. The only time I've actually heard reference of this was The Righteous Gemstones most recent season actually talked about it, like briefly made a reference. I was like, oh my goodness, they actually mentioned Darkman. Like I got it even though I hadn't seen the movie at the time, but I was like, oh wow, that's funny that they're mentioning a movie from 1990 that most people aren't really aware of. So if it's not on your radar, again, I would highly recommend you check out Darkman. And yeah, that's why it's on number 5. Next up, my number 4, we have Spider-Man 2. So Spider-Man 2, I know a lot of people have this as their 1 or 2, and I can respect that for sure. I do like it. I do think that overall it is a rock solid film, close to being good. I think that the performances are good. I really like Tobey Maguire, and I think that the writing is much stronger than the first entry and definitely stronger than the third entry. You really feel that imbalance of, trying to focus on being a superhero, but at the same time also being, someone that is trying to go to college and everything, and just that imbalance to things. Oh, and also having a girlfriend. So it's very interesting to see all those elements and seeing how Spider-Man, someone with superpowers, is trying to do all those things, which is what most people try to do. Obviously, not this superhero aspect. So I liked it. It gave a real sense of grounded realism and relatability that I appreciated. Now, by all means, don't get me wrong, it's a very stylish film, but that style is something that I do welcome. I think that it works quite well, and I do think that overall, I see why some people have this as some of their, one of their favorite superhero films. Not personally mine, but I can see the appeal for sure. And yeah, that's why it's on number 4. Next up, on number 3, we have this is gonna be a hot take. So my number 3 is Evil Dead 2. So Evil Dead 2, here's the thing. This probably would be my number 2 and not my number 3, but what holds it back is the first 10 minutes basically is a recap / remake, if you will, of the first entry, which I wasn't really a fan of. It was just really, come on now. Just cut that out and you would have yourself a really good film. But as it stands, that is in that, and that is considered part of it. So it's just very frustrating because when you're watching the trilogy and it's like you're watching the first one and the second one, you're like, wow, watching the second one, the first 10 minutes, you're like, oh wow, I'm watching footage and everything that, is basically reshot and everything, but literally it is the same in terms of the concept and everything. So it's very frustrating. But I still like it. I like Evil Dead 2 quite a bit. I think that it's a really good blend of horror and comedy. And I can't wait to rewatch it. I do think that it is quite good. And yeah, that's why it's my number 3. Next up, my number 2, we have the surprise for me. My number 2 was Army of Darkness. So Army of Darkness, a little bit of backstory. When I first watched The Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 back in, I think it was 2017, I didn't watch the third one because I heard that it wasn't good. So I didn't watch it. But then when I rewatched the series in 2019, I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to watch Army of Darkness because who knows? Maybe it's the type of situation where I'll still appreciate it. I'll still like it. And it turns out I did like it. I actually liked it quite a bit. So much so that I actually slightly like it better than Evil Dead 2. And again, I do think that partially that is because of the first 10 minutes of Evil Dead 2. But I still thoroughly enjoy Army of Darkness. It is quite ambitious. I like the visual effects. I like the storytelling. I like the lead performance, of course. But what I especially liked is that I'm someone that I watched Ash vs. Evil Dead, the TV show, like all 3 seasons. And it was funny because watching Army of Darkness, it's like that's almost like a prelude to that TV show. So I appreciated that aspect as well. I definitely think that it's underrated. It seems like it's the ugly stepchild of the trilogy. But yeah, I like Army of Darkness. I would highly recommend it, and that's why it's my number 2. Next up, my number 1, we have, and this might be a surprise to some, but my number 1 is A Simple Plan. So I mentioned the Coen brothers earlier with Crime Wave and how they wrote that. Well, A Simple Plan 100% is a companion piece to Fargo, which is directed by the Coen brothers, where it's stupid characters doing stupid things, but at the expense of creating a thrilling comedy. And that's something I really appreciate. I really, really was shocked at how good A Simple Plan is. Like, it is really, really good. I don't think it has a Blu-ray release yet, but whenever it does get a Blu-ray or 4K release, I'll definitely be picking this up because I think it is really, really good. Sam Raimi's style is there for sure, and it's really good. Again, great performances, great score, and I love also how the setting really feels like a character in itself. So I love this Simple Plan. I would highly recommend you check it out, and yeah, that's why it's my number 1. But yeah, guys, at the end of these videos, I usually like to try to talk about the director and if I like them or not. And I would say overall, Sam Raimi, he has had some misses for sure in the past. But I do think that he's a good director. I think that he has an eye behind the camera. And I do like his directing style when, we're able to see it. Like in the case of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, I really couldn't see his style. It felt like a bland product. But all of his actual movies and everything, you can feel that style, you can feel that care and that craft that he puts into each movie, and I appreciate that. Even if not all of his movies necessarily hit for me, I can still respect that, and yeah, I like Sam Raimi. I think his style is good. But yeah, guys, let me know your ranking for Sam Raimi's films in the comment section down below, and as always, don't forget the subscription, notification bell, follow me down Letterboxd, and I will catch you guys later.